Welcome to our channel Hashmi Clinics.
I want you to take a second and just mentally open up your spice cabinet.
Yeah, just picture what's sitting in there right now.
Right. You're probably picturing the usual suspects. You know, the cinnamon, the cumin, maybe a little jar of paprika way in the back.
Oh, absolutely.
And we tend to look at these small glass jars as strictly culinary tools. Like they're just simple things we use to throw a little flavor into our food.
Yeah, mostly just an afterthought for dinner.
Exactly. But there is this whole hidden world inside that cabinet. Some of those everyday ingredients secretly house incredibly complex, almost unbelievably specific effects on the human body.
It really forces a complete shift in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, we are so deeply accustomed to treating medicine and food as two entirely separate categories.
Right. You buy one at a pharmacy and you buy the other at a grocery store.
Exactly. But historically, and certainly from a botanical standpoint, that dividing line barely exists. The very things we use to season a soup were, well, they were often the primary tools used to manipulate human biology.
Which brings us to the core mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring the personal notes of Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi.
Yes, his personal documentation.
And the entire subject of these notes is a single plant, Anisum Stellatum.
Which most people probably know as Star Anise.
Right, or Chinese anise. So our goal today is to unpack these fascinating, really granular medical notes and figure out how this one plant spans the massive gap between being, a casual breath mint and a targeted treatment for highly specific, severe ailments.
And I have to say, Dr. Hashmi's notes are categorized with a level of precision that is honestly staggering. I mean, we're looking at a text that takes this plant, which, just for context, belongs to the Magnoliaceae family.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually found growing as a low tree or a shrub with these smooth, entire leaves. And the text maps its medicinal effects across the entire topography of the human anatomy.
It's wild. I mean, think of these historical notes like a highly detailed user manual for the human body.
Yeah.
But the tool we're using to tinker with the gears is something you'd literally just drop into a pot of soup.
That's a great way to frame it.
Right. So let's unpack the logic here.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the really heavy systemic medical symptoms, it probably makes sense to start where most people actually encounter Star Anise.
Which is the mouth.
Exactly. The mouth.
Yeah. Grounding this in the plant's everyday utility is definitely a great starting point because throughout China, Japan, and India, the star anise fruit has this really long history as a widely used condiment.
Yeah, cooking with it is super common.
But alongside cooking, there is a very specific, practical folklore attached to it. People would actually chew the fruit in small quantities directly after a meal.
And the purpose there was specifically to sweeten the breath, which, intuitively makes total sense to anyone who has smelled it.
Oh, yeah, it has that very intense, almost licorice-like aroma.
Exactly. But the notes actually delve into the botanical architecture behind why that happens. It turns out when you bruise the leaves of the plant, they exhale this incredibly strong aniseed odor. And the source of that odor comes down to volatile oils contained in what the text describes as minute pellucid dots.
Minute pellucid dots. Yeah, pellucid meaning translucent, right. Allowing light to pass through.
Wait, so minute pellucid dots.
Yeah.
It sounds like the plant has tiny microscopic flavor capsules built right into it. Like little essential oil water balloons just sitting in the leaves.
That's exactly what they are. And what is truly remarkable is the scale of it. These dots are so exceptionally small that they can only be seen with a magnifying lens.
Wow.
So you have these early botanists and practitioners painstakingly examining the smooth surface of these leaves under glass just to find the exact anatomical origin of the plant's power.
So you bruise the leaf, you pop the invisible balloons, and suddenly you have this potent essential oil interacting directly with the air.
Right, and that volatile oil is doing much more than just providing a pleasant perfume. When a person chews the fruit, those compounds are released into the saliva, and they interact directly with the tissues of the mouth.
And the digestive tract.
Exactly. It's an active botanical compound that is fundamentally altering the local environment of the body.
Okay, so if releasing those microscopic essential oils soothes the mouth and sweetens the breath, the obvious question is, well, what happens when those same compounds travel further down the pipe?
Right, which takes us into the first major line of medical defense outlined in the text.
the gut and the lungs.
Yes. So moving from the localized effect in the mouth to broader digestion, the historical record states that Star Anise held local repute as a stomachic and a carminative.
A carminative meaning it released flatulence, right?
Exactly. It prevents the formation of gas in the gastrointestinal tract, or it helps facilitate its expulsion.
So it basically settles the stomach.
It does.
Yeah.
But Dr. Hashmi's documentation does not stop at a generic, settles the stomach kind of description. The text gets incredibly specific about who is being treated and the exact nature of their distress.
Right, I remember this. It highlights the use of Star Anise for violent wind colic.
Yeah.
And there's this very specific demographic singled out. Babies suffering from the 3 months colic.
The observation here is just meticulous. The text specifies that this particular type of infant colic recurs at regular hours, and it's accompanied by significant rumbling in the abdomen and disturbed bowels.
But there is a really distinctive detail that historical practitioners look for, right? The griping pain in the baby's abdomen is actually worse from passing the flatus.
Yeah, passing the gas makes it worse.
Which feels completely counterintuitive. You would naturally assume that passing the gas would relieve the physical pressure and, make the baby feel better.
You'd think so, yeah.
But the notes emphasize that the very act of passing it exacerbates the griping pain.
It's a paradoxical symptom.
Would you?
And in historical medicine, paradoxical symptoms were incredibly valuable diagnostic markers.
Because it tells you something else is going on.
Exactly. The pain the infant is experiencing isn't merely from the static pressure of trapped air. The mechanical action of the bowels contracting and moving that gas through a highly sensitized, irritated digestive tract that triggers sharp, agonizing spasms.
Oh, wow.
So the volatile oils in the Star Anise are introduced to calm that extreme sensitivity, to soothe the spastic motion of the gut.
So on one end of the spectrum, you have 3-month-old babies dealing with trapped wind. But then on the absolute opposite end of the human experience, the text outlines its use for purulent tracheal and gastric catarrh.
Right.
And this is in old alcoholics, using the older term dipsomania, and old asthmatics. So it targets the very beginning of life and the later stages of life dealing with severe chronic damage.
It's quite a contrast.
It's fascinating that it targets both extremes.
What is the underlying connection here? How did early practitioners connect a baby's colic to an older person dealing with alcoholism? The connection really lies in the underlying state of the body's tissues. Whether you're looking at a crying infant or an older individual with decades of heavy alcohol use or chronic asthma, the common denominator is a profound need to soothe violent spasms.
Right.
And to clear deep, heavy congestion. The text relies heavily on the term catarrh, which was the historical medical classification for an excessive discharge or buildup of mucus.
Usually associated with severe inflammation of the mucous membranes, right?
Exactly.
And the word purulent is added in the notes, which means the mucus contains pus. So we're talking about highly infected, profoundly inflamed mucosal buildup in the trachea and the stomach lining.
Yeah, it's severe. Heavy, chronic consumption of alcohol continuously strips and irritates the gastric lining. It creates an environment of perpetual inflammation, which they diagnosed as gastric catarrh.
Makes sense.
And chronic asthma involves a similar inflammatory spasticity, just in the respiratory airways instead of the stomach. So the Star Anise is utilized to address that severe underlying mucosal irritation.
And interestingly, the notes provide specific modalities, right?
Yeah.
Like conditions that worsen the patient's state.
Yes.
These purulent catarrh symptoms are aggravated by alcoholic drinks, which is expected. But they're also significantly aggravated by hot drinks.
Right. The heat acts as a further irritant to an already inflamed system.
So you have these volatile compounds from the plant stepping in to essentially put out a fire in the mucous membranes, regardless of whether that fire was started by infant digestion or years of heavy drinking.
It really is a testament to how versatile these old remedies were considered to be.
It really is. But this actually brings us to a part of the text that moves away from broad systemic issues into something so unimaginably precise, it kind of changes how you view historical observation.
Oh, you are referring to the special remembrance symptom.
Yes. The professor, Dr. Hashmi, explicitly writes in the documentation that there is one particular symptom worthy of special remembrance.
It's a very specific pain.
Yeah, a pain in the chest. But it's not described as a general tightness or just a broad ache. It is pinpointed to the region of the third rib.
Right.
Specifically, about 1 to 2 inches from the sternum. It usually presents on the right side, though occasionally on the left, right at the junction of the third rib with the cartilages.
The anatomical precision there is just striking.
That is almost absurdly exact. I mean, the third rib, exactly 1 to 2 inches away. How does a practitioner even pinpoint that exact spot in relation to a plant extract? And what does it tell us about how closely these early practitioners were observing their patients?
Well, it reveals a medical framework that relied entirely on the patient's subjective, lived reality. I mean, think about it today. If a patient complains of chest pain, a physician's immediate instinct is to look past the patient using technology.
Right, an X-ray, an MRI.
A CT scan, yeah. The truth of the disease is found in the imaging. But historically, the physician and the patient had to map the disease together through sensory experience.
So they had to be incredibly attentive.
Absolutely. A pain localized exactly at the third intercostal cartilage isn't just a random data point. It is a highly specific marker. If you look at human anatomy, the apex and middle sections of the lungs sit directly behind that cartilaginous junction.
Which aligns perfectly with the other, frankly, terrifying symptoms that accompany this specific pain. The documentation notes that this third rib pain occurs during a frequent cough.
A very severe cough.
Yeah, a cough producing pus-like phlegm. It's accompanied by dyspnea, meaning shortness of breath, and hemoptysis, which is coughing up blood.
Right. Hemorrhage, deep chest congestion, and enlarged liver are all noted as part of this complex.
Wow.
So the plant is not being prescribed for a mild winter cold here. It is inextricably linked to a profound, localized respiratory trauma.
Yeah. The patient is sitting in the room, likely terrified, coughing up blood, and they point to one exact agonizing spot on their chest.
Exactly. And that physical gesture, 1 to 2 inches from the sternum on the third rib, becomes the diagnostic compass pointing the practitioner straight to Star Anise.
It's wild. You can vividly picture that interaction in some 19th century clinic, but the text's focus on hyperspecificity doesn't actually end with the chest. It extends into how this systemic illness completely warps the patient's sensory perception.
Sensory anomalies.
Yes, there's a section on this that we absolutely have to discuss, particularly what I can only call the rye bread mystery.
Oh, the sensory distortions documented here are incredibly peculiar.
Yeah.
The notes state that when a patient is suffering from this specific complex of symptoms, their sense of taste is drastically altered. Practically everything they attempt to eat tastes entirely wrong. Specifically, it tastes too salty or too bitter.
Everything tastes like salt and bitterness, except for one highly specific type of carbohydrate.
Rye bread.
Rye bread.
According to the text, rye bread is the sole exception. It tastes good to the patient, and even the odor of it is perceived as refreshing.
Well, the rye bread thing is wild. It's like Star Anise gives your taste buds a highly specific bouncer that kicks out all other flavors and only lets rye bread into the club.
That's exactly what it's like.
In a historical context, how did practitioners interpret something that strange? I mean, why rye bread?
Well, they viewed the body holistically. They didn't separate a diseased lung or an inflamed stomach from the function of the tongue or the nose. If the gastric system is in a state of purulent catarrh, the entire digestive pathway beginning at the palate is considered corrupted. So the fact that a dense, earthy, slightly sour grain like rye bread bypasses that sensory corruption was noted not as a random quirk.
It was a clue.
Exactly. It was a vital clue to the nature of the internal imbalance. It was a signpost pointing to the specific energetic disruption the patient was experiencing.
That holistic view really makes sense of the appetite quirks mentioned right after that, too. Because the text notes that the patient's appetite actually remains good, like they feel hunger, but they experience a sudden feeling of satiety after eating very little.
Right.
So the stomach is demanding food, but the moment food arrives, the highly sensitive inflamed gastric lining rejects the mechanical pressure and signals that it's completely full.
It's a profound miscommunication within the body. The hypersensitivity of the stomach lining creates a false signaling loop. And that intense sensory distress is mirrored in the physical tissues of the face and mouth.
Oh, the symptoms described for the lips are incredibly distressing.
They sound awful.
The text details a stinging sensation in the upper lip. It's described as feeling as if blood would literally press out of the tissue.
Just intense pressure.
Yeah. And paradoxically, this severe stinging is better from touch.
Right. And simultaneously, that same upper lip experiences such extreme dryness that it is drawn tightly against the teeth. It's a mechanical retraction of the tissue driven by a complete lack of moisture.
And the lower lip is experiencing a totally different nightmare. The inner surface of the lower lip has a burning sensation combined with numbness and a sore, bruised pain.
Yeah.
The text uses the phrase, as if it had gone to sleep. If you think about that horrible static electricity feeling when your foot falls asleep, and imagine that sensation localized entirely on the inside of your lower lip, along with sharp stitches beneath it.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And as the notes move past the lips to the tongue, the description of mucosal distress just escalates. There's the formation of apthi, which are small ulcers, all along the edges of the tongue.
And the structure of the tongue itself distorts. The text states the tongue is folded like little bags on the edges.
Folded like little bags.
Yeah. And the most fascinating part of this observation is what it's paired with. This folded, ulcerated tongue is accompanied by heart palpitation.
Right. In classical observation, linking the physical distortion of the tongue directly to the rhythm of the heart demonstrates their understanding of systemic continuity.
They weren't isolating the symptom.
Exactly. They weren't looking at a mouth sore as a localized issue requiring a topical ointment while treating the heart palpitation as an unrelated cardiac event. They saw the folded tongue and the racing heart as dual expressions of the same underlying crisis. The whole system is vibrating with distress.
A full-body cascade, which transitions us perfectly into the final section of Dr. Hashmi's notes. We expand outward from the chest and the mouth to the extremities, the nervous system, and ultimately the cosmos.
Yeah, the full-body oddities described here are severe.
Very severe.
Beginning with the extremities, the patient experiences a pain in the thigh so intense that it feels as if the bone is broken.
I mean, a pain mimicking a broken femur is a terrifying baseline.
It is. Yet, true to the methodology we've been discussing, there is a strict modality attached to it. This agonizing thigh pain is worse when sitting, and it is ameliorated, it gets better, when the patient stands or rises.
And there's also a distinct itching and crawling sensation noted on the hand and palm, right?
Yes.
The head and ears are similarly overwhelmed. The text documents head pains that are worse in the morning but better in the evening. And the ears are subjected to a constant barrage of noise. Buzzing, hissing, roaring, and ringing.
It's a sensory overload.
Completely. And what I find incredibly poignant is the sequence that follows. All of that ringing in the ears is followed directly by sleepiness, especially in the evening after sunset. It paints a picture of a nervous system that is just entirely exhausted from the overload and simply powers down.
It's a state of absolute nervous exhaustion. And amidst all these severe, overwhelming symptoms, the text includes one tiny detail that stands out for its sheer, peculiar simplicity.
Ah, the itch.
Yes, the itch.
I find this detail endlessly fascinating. Amidst the coughing up blood, the broken thigh bones, and the roaring ears, the text carefully documents an itching over the left ear, specifically the left.
Just the left ear.
And this itch magically vanishes the moment you touch the place.
Yeah.
You don't even have to scratch it. Simple contact erases the symptom.
It really highlights how acutely these practitioners were listening to their patients. Even the most fleeting, minor nervous misfire was recorded and cataloged as part of the total disease picture.
Which is necessary, because those minor misfires exist alongside truly catastrophic nervous system events. The text moves from an itch on the ear to vomiting, accompanied by epileptiform convulsions, where the patient physically bites their tongue.
Yeah, it's intense.
It also documents violent circulatory rushes, including violent erections with a tendency to pollution, which is the historical terminology for involuntary emissions.
Right. When you combine the convulsions, the auditory hallucinations, the extreme tissue retractions, and the volatile circulatory surges, you are observing a central nervous system in a state of profound chaos.
Total chaos.
And to address this chaos, the text specifies the pharmacy of the remedy. They do not use the leaves. They use a tincture made specifically from the seeds of the Star Anise.
And the dosing instructions are vital here. The text states it is historically given in the third potency. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with historical remedy preparation, a potency refers to a very specific process of dilution. You take the original extract and dilute it, say 1 part extract to 99 parts alcohol or water, and you repeat that process multiple times.
Diluting it over and over.
Exactly. So a third potency is a heavily diluted fraction of the original substance. They are taking the tiny seeds of this plant, diluting them exponentially, and using that microdose to treat massive, violent, full-body convulsions.
The theory being that the process of dilution and succession unlocks the energetic or medicinal property of the plant while stripping away the crude matter.
It's fascinating.
And this concept of scale, from the microscopic to the massive, is reflected in the final, beautifully poetic association Dr. Hashmi includes in the notes. Historically, botanicals were mapped to celestial bodies.
Right, astrology and medicine were linked.
Exactly. And this text associates Anisum Stellatum with the planet Jupiter.
So the text says, this plant is ruled by Jupiter, the absolute largest gas giant in our solar system, yet we are using a third potency tincture of its tiny seeds to cure an itch on the left ear that vanishes the second you touch it. There's a brilliant poetic irony to that scale, isn't there?
There really is. The macrocosm of the cosmos is reflected down into the microcosm of a tiny pellucid dot on a leaf. It is a stunning synthesis of thought. It serves as a reminder that early medicine did not view the human body in isolation.
Right.
They saw the patient's nervous system, the volatile oils of a magnoliaceae shrub, and the movements of the planets as interwoven threads of a single massive tapestry.
We have certainly pulled a lot of those threads today. We started by looking at a simple condiment chewed to sweeten the breath after a meal. We bruised the leaves to find volatile oils trapped in minute pellucid dots.
Yeah, we really covered a lot of ground.
We watched those oils travel down the throat to calm the regular, griping 3-month colic of an infant and soothe the inflamed, purulent gastric catarrh of an old alcoholic.
And we explored the meticulous nature of historical clinical observation, where a deep respiratory trauma was pinpointed by a patient gesturing exactly 1 to 2 inches from the sternum on their third rib.
We marveled at the rye bread mystery, where a systemic disruption warps the senses so completely that only one specific grain tasted good, while the lips burned and the tongue folded into little bags.
Folded into little bags, yeah.
And we tracked the collapse of the nervous system, from a thigh bone that feels broken to hissing ears, convulsions, and that tiny fleeting itch on the left ear. All of this profound medical architecture contained within the star-shaped seeds of a single plant.
Reviewing a text like this demands a deep respect for the sheer complexity of the natural world and, really, the immense dedication required by early practitioners to map those invisible connections.
Absolutely. And perhaps the most remarkable part of this entire journey is that this profound botanical knowledge is quite literally sitting in a little glass jar in your kitchen right now. It is just quietly waiting there.
Right next to the cumin.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought to consider. The next time you see a beautiful 8-pointed star anise pod floating in a savory bowl of pho or spicing up a warm cup of mulled wine, ask yourself what other incredibly specific hidden blueprints for the human body are quietly sitting in our spice racks, just waiting to be decoded.
Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi is a distinguished homeopathic physician, educator, and researcher with over 4 decades of clinical and teaching experience. He is widely respected for his deep command of materia medica, repertory, and constitutional prescribing, combined with a practical, patient-centered approach. Dr. Hashmi has dedicated his career to training generations of homeopathic doctors, blending classical principles with modern clinical insight. He is also known for his innovative work in digital homeopathy, developing educational content, clinical tools, and AI-assisted systems to enhance remedy selection and case analysis. With a strong commitment to ethical practice and lifelong learning, Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi continues to guide, inspire, and elevate the standards of homeopathic education and patient care.